Earlier this week, controversial Green MP Benjamin Doyle posted something out on his Instagram that we find deeply troubling at Let Kids Be Kids.
Right.
And what he did was he was asking for his people to complete the consultation for relationships and sexuality education changes. So let's just watch what he did.
The Ministry of Education has recently released their draft Relationships and Sexuality Education Framework to be implemented into a refreshed curriculum by 2027. The Minister has only given us until the 9th of May to send in our feedback. She said herself she wants to hear from kaiako, from rangatahi and from whānau, so that's teachers, community members and young people themselves around this particular framework. Relationships and sexuality education is important for all young people as it instills a genuine understanding of ourselves, others and our place in the world and healthy relationships. You can either fill in the survey online that the Ministry has created, or you can send an email directly to the Ministry, which is my preference. There are 2 key points you need to make sure that you cover at least in your feedback. The first is that you want the Ministry to retain and strengthen their consent education. Currently, the framework has a pretty strong curriculum line on consent education, starting at year 1 and going through to year 13. We don't want the Ministry to give any ground on that from people who are negative about consent education. So emphasise how important it is to tautoko that strand and retain it, strengthen it, and make sure we don't lose ground. The second thing I would say in my feedback to the Ministry is that you want to include gender and takatāpui and rainbow identities more genuinely, authentically, and consistently across the curriculum framework. Currently, all reference to takatāpui and Māori or any cultural sexualities and identities has pretty much been removed from the framework. Intersex identity has only been mentioned once in an example across 13 years of education, and there's a very heavily binary referencing to bodies, to relationship structures, and to how people exist in the world, which we know erases rainbow identities. So the second point you need to cover, again, is making sure that gender education, as well as rainbow and takatāpui identities, sexualities, and bodies are included meaningfully in the new curriculum framework. More details in the caption below, as well as the email address you can send that feedback to. The cut-off date is May the 9th. Kia kaha tonu tātou, Mauri ora.
So he's authorised that himself on behalf of the Greens Party, as it states there. The other contributors on that post on Instagram were Young Greens, NZ, youth, Lawrence Zunan, which is one of their MPs, Kahurangi Carter, so I think she's one of the MPs, and Rainbow Greens NZ, so they've got a whole Rainbow Greens thing. So that's what he wants to have say. Now, I would question whether, given the current controversy around Benjamin Doyle, should he be talking about sexual education of children in school at all? Is he the best representative for our children? He talks quite strongly about needing to strengthen and retain consent education at all levels. Now, he's talking 5-year-olds. And he's talking about sex ed.
Yeah, he mentioned year 1 or something in the one of the things that flashed past that I saw on the screen was year 1, 6 years of age, etc.
So that's currently what's kind of in there, and it's coming down from the United Nations. Comprehensive sexuality education is that their directive is that they want, that they believe that children are sexual beings from when they're born, and that they should be taught all of this stuff from when they're children. So when we hear that as parents, that's concerning. And that's what I talked about in the One News instant, is given who seems to be running sex education at the moment and who they're advising to, there would be questions around the way that consent is being taught. Erica Stamford in that interview makes out that, it's talking about, can I share my hoodie with you? And then it rolls on into sex education.
Yeah, something about share my bike with you or something.
Yeah, nah, she's doing a side pass there. I don't believe her in that, and that she either hasn't looked at what's really going on here or she's not hearing the cries of the people. But teaching underage children about consent, anything bigger than it's just no, they can't consent, is actually illegal. And they're turning it into a really contentious topic. But parents that I talk to either want it to be taught in a way that makes it clear that it's always a no, because when it comes to sex and you're under 16, anything, if you are leading children to believe that as long as they think it's okay. In the courts, how that's playing out is that sexual predators are getting off with light sentences because they're saying the minor consented to it.
Right, so they're trying to get consent happening at the youngest possible age in some way. That's dark.
Yeah, and of all the MPs in Parliament at the moment that would be pushing sex ed stuff on children, he would be the one that most people would be questioning why he's there, but he's the spokesperson for the Greens putting that out. So that came across our desk. It's good to be able to show it again. He also quite openly refers to InsideOut, which we talked about in our previous video and we talk about quite a bit, and Sexual Wellbeing Aotearoa. So Sexual Wellbeing Aotearoa was family planning, and they're the ones that have got the resources in most of the school sex ed classes. So 50% of schools will be referencing their material. So he's actually just tied them all together with the Green Party's philosophy on sex education.
What was family planning originally?
So family planning was what it was originally called, and it got renamed Sexual Wellbeing Aotearoa.
No, but what did family planning do originally?
Well, they were there to help with contraception and things like that.
That was my understanding of it. Yeah, that family planning was originally there for contraception. They seem now to be totally bought and captured, infiltrated, if you will, with an entirely different ideology.
And they are connected to where schools can send girls off to have abortions and the parents won't be told.
Right.
They do a lot of teaching about sexually transmitted diseases, which they call infections. And that's
it's really interesting that you can do that whole send them off to have abortions and the parents won't be told thing, because once you've got that pass through, then it's really no great step to pass through another element of we don't tell parents about Johnny's a girl now or whatever.
That's right.
Yeah.
They've totally removed the parent. That's what these organisations seem to be doing, and they seem to think that that's the best thing for the child. So really it comes down to, does the parent think that that's the best thing for the child? The outcomes would sort of hint that that's very much not the right thing to do. But they are creating, because they don't talk about abstinence, they don't talk about waiting until you're older, they're really, really, really educating children on being sexually active. They will end up with girls going to get abortions and lots of people going along to get their contraception, lots of people having sexually transmitted infections. So they're not teaching about it in a way that's saying, stay away from all this, it's bad, it's adult stuff. They're saying, hey, this stuff is all by the by. And in the year 10 Navigating the Journey book, it actually has a template for how to go and talk to the family planning clinic and talk about all that stuff. So it's everything that's not about having this conversation with parents.
Because if they're teaching kids to sexualize and to get more active at that sort of stuff at the youngest possible age, and therefore they have more moments of input because they keep going back to the clinic because of an STD or because of something else, then each returning moment of input to a captured organisation is another opportunity to indoctrinate.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Well, and the further that a child goes into the sexual world of adults, the further that they're probably going to drift away from their families.
The further that scalpel divides them through the school system. Yeah, right.
Yeah, it's tough. So he talks about all of that there. So why I'm doing this quick video is that they're activating their left-wing or trans rights activism network to complete the RSE consultation by May the 9th. That's Ben Doyle there whipping it up and basically teaching them how to do it and saying, here are the 3 things that I want you to tell them. I want you to tell them to retain consent. I want you to tell them to bring takatapu and intersex and trans and non-binaries back. And I want there to be lots of information about breaking down gender binaries. So anybody that's new to this language, a gender binary is what we would call biological sex, male and female. They're wanting to break that down. And as a society, we need to decide whether that's acceptable, whether that's truthful, and whether that's where we want our society to head, because that's what they're pitching for. Okay, so he's giving step-by-step feedback as to how to do that. So next I just want to show you, so he mentions InsideOut there. So on InsideOut's own website, and it referenced it in his Instagram video, you'll see there. So they're lobbying, make an urgent submission on the draft relationship and sexuality education framework today because submissions close on May the 9th. So this is by Tabby Beasley, who our previous video was about.
InsideOut,
yep.
Yeah.
So she's saying relationship and sexuality education at schools is at risk. We need our voices heard. Well, it's not at risk. It's trying to get back to what sex education was. So they're saying the same thing. So they're saying the draft framework as it stands is flawed. It excludes the trans and non-binary communities, blah, 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 all their poor me story.
Right.
So they've activated their followers.
Yeah.
And then we also received an email today. We actually received this a couple of times from people that some of them weren't even sure how they got it.
Wow.
But it was from a group called Action Station, Our Action Station. And it was a lobbying email that has gone out to, I would say, tens of thousands of people, probably in different groups, because I got this from people from 2 different groups.
Right.
And this again is doing the same thing. So they're activating their lobbyists and their trans community or trans ally community to complete the RSE consultation, saying, here, trans people have existed for as long as there have been people. And Aotearoa has traditionally been one of the most pro-trans in the world. It says in 2023, New Zealand overwhelmingly agreed, 84%, that transgender people should be protected from discrimination. Now, I'm not going to go into the research here, but the research is not representative of what really is going on. And so there they are doing that. Now, so I'm just going to go to Action Station's website so that you can see what is behind this group. So you can see there right at the top the logo. So you can see it's linked to left wing, to Pāti Māori, to Tiriti activism. Mm-hmm. Okay. You can see the Māori flag, and then you can see the pride flag. You can see that they're activating about climate change and all of the things. So all of the things that the common sense thinking, Black Lives Matter, people are questioning. In behind all of this drama that we're seeing are these activated groups.
It's really interesting too to see them all lumped in together there like that, because that's like one almighty, humongous group of stuff you're just not allowed to question these days, and media is not allowed to say a damn thing about it because obviously it controls them.
100%. So you start to see what all of this is.
Yeah.
So this Action Station has obviously been around for a while. So I've just gone to the page under About Us called Who Funds Us, and it is funded by member donations, major donations, and grants. Being funded by our members and independent of government, lottery or political funding is essential. Seems quite political to me. You can actually go and access all of their financial reports. We're just going to have a look at this. Donations over $5,000. You will see, so J.R. Mackenzie Trust funds a lot of the rainbow ones, the rainbow organisations. Lush is an interesting one. So this week, Lush in the UK has come out with a trans soap, and they're pushing back and promoting against what happened in the UK when the Supreme Court decision about a woman by law is a biological woman.
Right.
So Lush, who's they do the smellies.
Yeah, some nice smelling soaps.
Yeah, stinky stuff that you walk past and you can't not notice.
Mm-hmm.
They've come out supporting the trans industry.
Mm-hmm.
So they actually fund this group in New Zealand called Action Station that is a political activism group.
Can you highlight them on the screen there? Where they were?
Yeah, sure. That one there.
Lush. Yeah, gotcha. Yep.
NetSafe has funded them, the Royal Society of New Zealand, Wellington Community Fund. So they're getting a global green grant. So they're getting a lot of funding to be able to do their activism work. They sent that email out to lots of people. And one of the groups that sent this email out was called Auckland Women's Centre. So Auckland Women's Centre sounds like an organisation for women, right?
Yeah.
So firstly, this is their page about it. Your opportunity to push back on cruel and dangerous education. Let's zoom in. So you can see here this was posted a couple of days ago under the categories of children, decolonisation, family violence.
Oh, God.
I know. It all comes back to that, actually. Your opportunity to push back on cruel and dangerous education. The government is attempting to impose its extremist, transphobic, racist, colonial and misogynistic views on the next generation via wholesale changes to education about relationships and sexuality. You can let them know that what they're doing is unacceptable. Isn't that crazy language? When all they're doing is taking out trans stuff from sex education, taking it out and New Zealand First's mandate was to remove gender ideology and political ideology from sex education, turn it back into sex education. So then you see there it's saying here's what you can do. So they're saying the same thing as Benjamin Doyle and InsideOut. Trans and non-binary erasure, and Te Ao Māori has been scrubbed out. I don't think it's quite that simple.
Really?
And so then you go, well, who's the Auckland Women's Centre? I thought this was an organisation for women. So when you go to the About Us page of this Auckland Women's Centre, you'll find their definition of who they are. Who are we? A friendly, accessible place for women and non-binary people. If it was for women, you wouldn't need the last few words of that first line. You would just say it's a friendly, accessible place for
women. Yeah, it's just a place for women. And why is non-binary even necessary if it's a women's centre?
So I see this everywhere. I see this in lots of organisations that I would think would be specifically for women, as in biological women, which to me tells me straight away that it's been infiltrated, and there are men in there who are wanting access to a women's space.
Totally ideologically
Because the only people that want to be in there that aren't women are men wanting to be women.
Yeah.
Which isn't the majority of men. Men are like, cool, give me my own man cave and you go have your women's spaces, right?
Yeah. So they've said it's a women's centre that men can come to, essentially.
Pretty much. But they're saying that they're getting away with it by saying that they are identifying as women. So
sure.
They're also committed to Te Tiriti o Waitangi, run by knowledgeable and passionate feminists, and I would question that, because there's a lot of feminists who are really upset about their women's spaces being taken over by men.
Yeah, all the feminists I know and are grateful to have found this whole thing shocking, because they've lost all their women's spaces to men who are infiltrating it as women.
Yeah, so Auckland Women's Centre, for anyone who's on the mailing list or goes to it who thinks that it is for women and wants it to be for women, needs to see that it's no longer for women. I don't know how long ago this happened. So it says here, open to all women, trans and cis. So trans is a man wanting to be a woman.
Sure.
Cis is what they call a straight woman, which is just...
That's that made-up word, right?
Women.
Yeah.
Of all ethnicities, incomes, cultures. I mean, they don't need to say it. They could just say it's for women.
Yeah.
But the fact that they've had to separate it all out means that it's not just for women.
No, it's an absolute giveaway of ideological capture, and that they have to justify it in some way.
Yep. So it's important to know who are the lobby groups that are pushing against what the current coalition government has stated that they're doing, which is to remove gender ideology. These groups are getting really hung up on the gender ideology side of things. There is a group called, and I don't know that they're actually doing it specifically around this one, although they will be in the background. It's a group called the Rainbow Support Collective. I've been looking at them for a little while, because literally they are a lobby group that's connected to a lot of the rainbow charities. So you can see there they talk about governance and boards. They have strategy around how to help other groups. They lobby on behalf or give them the templates of how to lobby.
Right.
So it's important, if people are really wondering where on earth this all came from, to please look up rainbowsupportcollective.nz.
Just go to the top of that page again. Yeah, that's what you'll see when you land there.
Yeah, and you can see they do submissions and advocacy work. Haven't at a quick glance that I've done, I haven't actually seen them pushing this RSC consultation, because it seems to have been decentralised and gone out through the groups that, like what I've just shown you, which would just be an example of some of the things that are going on out there. But it's to show that they're a political activist lobbying group that are basically feeding their research about stuff and how to lobby the government, back to the government. And I go back to what I was saying in an earlier video of us parents, us working people, us people that were contributing to the economy, and we're raising our children, and we're being moral and ethical and just ordinary.
Mm-hmm. Getting on and working hard. Getting
on with things. We had no idea that this stuff existed, nor that government funding was going into it, or private grant money was going into it, nor that there were thousands of people being employed in these spaces to do this activism work. And let kids be kids that I founded, we don't tend to focus on the lobbying side of things. We focus on helping parents at the grassroots.
Right.
But we have an opportunity over the next few days to send some messages to the government now that we know, or are trying to get the news out, that these lobby groups seem to be railroading into government policy. And it's not because they're the majority, it's because the majority of people were busy doing other things, more productive things.
Yeah, if you weren't telling people about this, ordinary folks, parents just getting on with life, if you didn't send this message out, then it would just be totally sewn up by these other groups that are activated through private messaging and their Instagram posts to their private sealed off groups and that kind of thing.
Yeah, and that's what I think has been happening for a lot of years. The list of lobby groups, activists that are pushing for these law changes, these policy changes are really long, and the list of people who don't want it are really short, not because we don't care, but because we had no idea it was going on.
Yeah, they make sure that you don't know. We know this because they have forms that see if you're an ally or not, and then ensure that you're excluded in any type of communication. So with that sort of level of deceit at the school, you'd be not surprised at all that there'd be this subterfuge to change things and not have the public at large know. Because if the public at large know, they go, well, hang on, this is not what our culture's about. Yeah. This isn't what our beliefs and values are all about.
No, and mainstream media are complicit in pushing the minority narrative as the majority. That's how I believe that it happened.
Mm-hmm. Well, they're very left-wing, very, very woke, very bought and paid by the Ardern years, I think.
Yeah. And even before that, I mean, I the more that I look at this stuff, it was going on for a lot longer than many of us. I mean, there were people out there trying to raise the alarm bell years ago, such as Bob McCroskey from Family First. Yeah. But because they don't get that, they get nailed on the mainstream media too.
Yeah, boy, wasn't he vilinised and somewhat unfairly. I've had a chance to watch some of his stuff. He seems like a nice guy who's just got the truth that he can see and wants people to know about it. Yeah, good on him.
And you've got Brian Tamaki, who's really loud about it, and they all are after him for that. And I mean, he is loud about it, and not everybody subscribes to what he does, and we're not a protest group and normally a lobby group either, but it doesn't mean that the essence of what he's saying and the urgency with which he's saying it is to be denied, because when you look into this stuff, someone's got to do something.
Yeah, this is one of those situations where I'm not religious, but when a religious group happens to hold the same set of values in a particular topic, I mean, I'm really happy for them to spread that message. Good for them. But it seems to me to be an entirely separate from a religious thing. It fits their values, but it's like it fits a lot of our values, whether you're religious or not.
Yeah, you don't have to be religious to have morals and to be realising that either parents are going to raise children or the state's going to raise the children.
Yeah, because if you're not raising it, someone else will do it for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and for most people they have the tools in their toolkit to raise their children, although the government and the policy, and all of the activist groups are trying to say that parents are not the best people to raise their children. So I'm just going to finish on just saying once again, like we always say, that on the Let Kids Be Kids website, letkidsbekids.nz, we have resources available to help at a grassroots level with your own children, to opt out, to communicate with your school teachers and things. Mm-hmm. And that if you want to go to complete the consultation feedback that Benjamin Dawes was talking about, but maybe you won't want to say what he wants to say, we'll put the link below. This is open until May the 9th, and we just, I mean, a household could put a couple of submissions in. The kids can put something in if they want to, because a lot of young people have got their say about what's going on. But mum and dad can both put a submission in. Why don't you put 3 or 4 in from a household? And let's just get the numbers up and let our voices be heard on this.
Thanks for making everyone aware of this, Penny. I appreciate it.